The Gene Keys system is a magical one. And I mean that in every sense of the word. And I know this because I have experienced its magic firsthand. However, there are certain ways to engage with the Gene Keys that unlock this magic. Because if you're just reading the book or looking at the online course and you're constantly taking in information, you're not allowing the Gene Keys wisdom to reach out to you. For every step that you take towards the Gene Keys, speaking of, they're going to be taking a step back towards you, but you have to provide the opportunity for that to happen. And that's why one of the tenets of the Gene Keys is self-inquiry, and another one is patience. And we need to take our time, we need to go slow, we need to sit with these things, we need to contemplate, another one of those Gene Key core 4 tenets. And that's what the purpose of this video is about. I want to teach you methods that I have found to contemplate the Gene Keys that have been really helpful. How lucky am I that this is my street? Just so lucky. So there are 3 types of contemplation that Richard talks about. Richard is the founder of the Gene Keys, and I highly encourage you get his book on contemplation. Everyone that I work with, I buy that book for them. So there's mental contemplation, and that is the sort of top layer. It's where it all begins. And that is why I'm out for this ruck right now. I'll circle back on that a little bit more later. Then the next one is emotional contemplation. So we're a layer deeper now, and we're letting that to start information, that wisdom start to settle into our astral body. And I have another method for letting that happen or helping that process. And then finally, we get to the deepest layer, which is the layer of physical contemplation, which I have found, again, a few methods to help that process along. What we're doing in contemplation is essentially giving space for the wisdom to seep into us, letting it know that we've made a commitment and we're willing to take our time. This isn't just a bunch of words on some pages. This is a magical connection to the archetypes and the energies that run our universe. And because of that, they have a personality of their own. They're wanting desperately to make contact with you, but they can't do that if your mind is constantly moving and your life is so loud that you can't hear the gentle whispers of a system that's speaking to your soul. Everything in the world that we see with our physical senses is so gross, like broad, you know, it's like you gotta knock super loud to get through there. But that's not how the divine communicates. So if you crave a relationship with God, you've got to slow down and create space and room. And that's why I'm going for a ruck right now. So one thing that I've found with mental contemplation, let's start there, which is where it begins. So what that would look like is, okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to read the Gene Key of my life's work. And I'm going to let the words seep into me. Then I'm going to set that book down and I'm just going to let it roll around in my brain, let it marinate. The way that Richard describes this is like, imagine a velvet box that is like one of those puzzle boxes, you know, that's got like a secret clasp or catch somewhere. And all you're doing in your mind is just moving that velvet box through your hands. So you're just rolling that Gene Key around in your brain ever so gently, but we're not focusing on any one specific thing. Because when we think we found the catch, we dig in and we press. But when it's the catch, it just pops open, right? When it's the right place at the right moment, it just gives itself up. And so those are the conditions. The grasping, the tightness is what's going to prevent the opening from happening. And so mental contemplation, we're holding the idea on one side, and then on the other side, we just have this open, non-dual awareness, this space where something can occur. So if you have a meditation practice, it's almost like you're using the gene key as your anchor. And if you're not familiar with that term, basically when you meditate, you use an anchor oftentimes in certain types of meditation. Most of the time, or a lot of the time, that's your breath. So your mind wanders and you come back to your breath as an anchor. Your mind wanders away, you come back to your breath. And I'll make another video on meditation. It has been a huge, huge part of my journey and a super valuable tool. But you can also use something like a candle as an anchor. So I light a candle and I'm focused on that candle. My brain begins to wander, and then I make my way back to the candle and the brain wanders and I come back. A note on that. That's the point of meditation. The point is not to stay open. The point is to train your mind to return. And so that's what we're doing with the gene key. The mind wanders away, and we want that. That's the space that we need. That's the wild. That's where the magic comes through. And then we refocus. We remember, I'm contemplating this gene key, and I come back to it. What I have found is that when I am doing something like this, right? When I'm out on a ruck, so this is a backpack, or a ruck is what it's called in the military, in the Marine Corps. It's from a company called Go Ruck. I love them. They're great. You should check them out. And this bag is bomb proof, literally. And in it is 30 pounds. However, if you are not someone who walks a ton or is super active, you could just do this walking. No problem with that. But what I have found is by moving my body, by moving my feet, it frees my mind. It's like people talk about getting ideas all the time in the shower or when they're doing the dishes. And there's a saying out there, dancing body, thinking mind. And I think that's the principle at play here. By keeping our body occupied, it sets our mind free to wander and engage and to forget about the looping patterns and all the stuff that we have to do. And so we give ourselves permission to keep playing with that velvet box in our mind. And it's something that, as you do it more, just starts to become more and more natural. And this could be any movement. So you could also go for a jog if that's what feels better for you. The big thing is that it's not something that has like a huge effort to it. Because if you're putting out too much effort, then your brain is just gonna focus on that thing. So it needs to be something that feels like there's flow to it and there's ease to it. Another thing that we can contemplate is what the actual sphere itself means. So again, for my example here, the sphere of life's work, what does that represent? Well, I know it's what I'm doing out in the world. I know that it's something that I'm meant to use my ego and my spirit in service to share and to be present and to be grateful. And so you can just be with that and think about how that sphere has shown up in your past and in your life. You can also contemplate the lines. So what does this line mean for me when it shows up as that second line dancer in the life's work, for example, or the sixth line teacher in my case? And how can I see that energy through all the history of my life? Again, just the lightest touch on each of these things. And one of the most powerful contemplations is, how does all of that come together? Another one that I love to contemplate is, how does the shadow relate to the gift? Because if we can see that relationship, then when it happens in real time, when I catch that shadow in real time, I understand ahead of time how to alchemize that energy. Okay, I know that I'm feeling like a failure, my 30-second gene key. Now, I know when I feel that failure energy, in order to work with it, I transform it into preservation. And what that means is stopping running away from something that I'm worried about, something falling apart, and start walking towards some sort of outcome that I need, right? So that's a very clear relationship in my brain that I've established through this practice of mental contemplation. Not to mention, you can hear my breath, I'm sure, I get some exercise when I'm doing this too. So it's 2 birds, 1 stone. I allow the magic to come into my body, and this really provides breakthrough moments. Like, these are when I have these aha, oh crap, how did I not think about that epiphanies? Also, I have the 41st gene key as my pearl, and the city there is emanation. And I've noticed that when my body is moving, that's when these emanations start to come forth. An emanation is this idea that comes out of nowhere, the something that comes from the nothing, the thing that comes from the void. And there's something about moving your body that allows this emanation to come through. And that's what I'm saying in creating the space to allow the Gene Keys wisdom, the magic, to do its work. How pretty is this oak tree? So beautiful. I'm so lucky. So, what was I saying? I think the magic is just, you start to realize that it's everywhere. And you start to realize, if only given an opportunity, if only given time and space, if only you can relinquish control, then things start to happen that you could never, ever, ever in a million years put together. That cicada is super loud, sorry. And we're so worried about controlling what's happening that we don't allow the magic to be there, and I want it so badly for you. The degree to which my life has shifted over the past couple years and continues to shift is in large part because I started to notice that when I let go of control, things started to happen. And where I noticed those things is in contemplation. It's when I gave myself the time and space and I realized, oh man, this happened and connected to this thing, which caused this to happen. And I didn't really have anything to do with that, but it was exactly what I needed at exactly the right moment to get me to the next step along my journey. So the next layer of contemplation down, after we've mentally started to understand something, is now we've got to pull it down into our astral body. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. And the astral body is largely dictated by the sphere of attraction, right? It has a lot to do with sexuality, a lot to do with desire. And we need to approach it in a slightly different way. At least I've needed to approach it in a slightly different way. Because when I'm out for a ruck or a jog, it frees my mind, but again, my body, which for me, my emotions are very much embodied. They're very much like somatic experiences. Like when I get angry, I feel my face get hot, my hands get tingly. When I'm nervous, I feel, the butterfly sensation in my stomach. And so my theory is that this kind of ruck or jog keeps your body too busy to feel into those emotions. And so I'm going to show you how I do my emotional contemplation, how I tap in and feel that space next. Because when we start to pull those gene keys into the astral body, that's when it's really important, because when we get overwhelmed, that's when things start to come out sideways, right? That's typically when the shadow begins to show itself. And that's intimately tied to our emotions and our astral body. So we've got to allow this energy, this magic, to work a layer deeper than just up here, right? Up here is step one, but there's a big difference between knowledge and logically understanding something and then actually embodying that thing. And my guess is that emotional contemplation is how we do that. So I'm going to come back in a sec and we will look at my method. All right, let's go down to where the emotional contemplation takes place. Again, check out this view of my back porch, man. I just love it here. So this is where I go down to do my letting this Gene Keys wisdom sink in at a deeper level, at the next level, at the place of my heart, at the place of my belly, at the place of my relationships, and working on my willingness and openness to accept whatever happens to me and to stay in just this place of peace. All right, ready for the big reveal? Forgive me the lighting here. It's not going to be the best. This is the emotional contemplation zone, my home gym. Let me tell you how I do it. So I was a guy that was very disconnected from his emotions for a very long time. For example, when my daughter was born, now 13 years ago, I was shocked at how little emotion I felt. I didn't shed a tear. It was like I was in this void. And it makes me really sad to this day, because I feel like I missed out on an experience that for me is once in a lifetime that I can never get back because I was so shut down. And the reason that I tell you that is because I knew and know that I needed something to reconnect me to my emotions, to reconnect me to what I was feeling, to bring something up in my body. And as I did my mental contemplation, what I realized is that I'm an athlete. And because I'm an athlete, doing things that are hard work with my physical body brings up a lot of emotion in me. Like when I would play a championship baseball game or fight jujitsu or whatever it is, I felt this flood, this rush of emotion, even when I was really emotionally shut down. And honestly, I'm realizing this even right now as I'm making this video. I don't know that I ever connected these dots quite in this way. My gut intuition was, if that's what makes you feel, perhaps we can use that to leverage the emotional contemplation of the Gene Keys. And actually it started even before the Gene Keys. It started with trying to release stored trauma, right? If you've never read the book, The Body Keeps the Score, I cannot recommend it enough. It's all about how our body holds on to trauma and how it gets stored in different places in our fascia, in our hips, and our low back. And it's a literal freezing that happens. And it's like a locking down of the tissue in that area of our body, and it causes all sorts of other stuff to go haywire. Originally, I was trying to get in touch with my emotions for that reason. But then I recognized that it was a super valuable tool for when I was doing stuff with the gene keys also. And so the way that I do this is I'll typically do a set of a movement. And usually I'm doing something that's heavier. That's just a 30-pound sandbag that I'm doing some single leg split squats for. Quick disclaimer, if you've never worked with a coach in the physical realm, in the fitness space, especially if you're gonna be trying to lift heavy weights, I really cannot, with good conscience coming from that world, tell you to do that without going and having the watchful eye of somebody that knows what they're doing. Especially if you're doing things with barbells and dumbbells, which is what I'm going to recommend, because it adds this layer of control and stability and like turns our whole body on and causes us to breathe really deeply. You can still get that with Nautilus equipment or with like machines, but it's much harder. When you're working with implements like that, it's really important that you know what you're doing, you know biomechanics, and you understand how your body is supposed to move. Anyway, if I really want to get into like a deep emotion, like something around fear, for example, I'll get a barbell out and I'll set up a heavy deadlift. And if you're unfamiliar with a deadlift, all it is just taking something off of the ground and standing up tall with it. But think about all the engagement, all the action that's happening through the hamstring, the hip, and the low back, which for me is where I know a lot of my stuff is stored. So as you're doing this, think through that yourself. Like, is your tension here, up here in your shoulders? Maybe you need to be doing some sort of press. Is it here in your chest or in your heart space? Maybe you can do a push-up or a bench press or something where we're pushing horizontally. Is it in your belly? We can do like some form of like a weighted sit-up or a hip extension. There's lots of different options, but what's important is that you really work hard, and it doesn't have to be high reps. So like for me, I'm doing maybe 3 sets of 3 reps. So they're really low, but really heavy. And after that 3rd rep, I just feel this like rush of energy and intense emotion. And what I do at that point is either, just like I'm doing right now, sitting on this box, or because I have the benefit of a home gym, I can just lay down in the middle of the floor and I just feel everything that's happening in my body. And it's something about lifting that heavy weight that allows this like energy flow to start. And I get this really intense like tingling in my hands and in my feet and just this really intense release. And sometimes what I find is it can be quite intense in the emotion that comes up. Like it really get angry, or I get this warrior type energy that is like, you know, all I can think of is like a haka from New Zealand. Like it's like, wah, right? And it's like this really intense primal urge that really feels like it's like directly tapping into the ancestral part of my astral body. Other times, usually when I'm doing something maybe a little bit lighter, so that's another place you can go, is maybe doing something in like the 8 to 10 or 12 or even 15 rep range. And typically when that happens, I'm able to access my sadness a little bit more. So I kind of like struggle out on that last rep, like, drop it down and then feel kind of beat up, and that opens up this place within me of being exhausted and feeling dejected and feeling like I'm not enough and I can't do enough. And in that experience, I get to tap into that physically within my body. And that's important with this emotional contemplation, is you're not thinking about the emotions, you're feeling the emotions. So try not to separate yourself from them. Try not to let there be an emotion and somebody processing the emotion. Because in reality, that's just a story you're telling yourself. That's you thinking that you're here in your head. But I'm feeling the floor down here on my feet, not through my head, I'm feeling it on my feet. And I'm processing that in my brain as I feel sensation on my feet. I have to do that in order to say those words, but ultimately I'm using the sensations in my feet to know that my feet are on the floor. And I can eliminate that intermediary that is filtering, okay, feet on the floor, and telling a story around that thing. So when you're getting into this emotional space, we want to try to feel it directly. Try to notice like any sensations that you're having. Try to identify where it is in your body. Sometimes your body's gonna really wanna move around, and I'm gonna talk more about that when we get to physical contemplation. But if that happens, I ask you to honor it. Do what feels right in that moment. And you can kind of follow these things, these processes through your body. Now, with emotional contemplation, as we come back into the gene keys, there's a few really great places in your profile that I've found to use this. Number one is your sphere of evolution, your biggest challenge, right? That typically is going to bring up some emotions, some, oh, why does this keep happening? Why can't I get it together? Why, dot, whatever your story is. And so getting into our emotions there and feeling them all the way through and following that gene key down its rabbit hole in the same way, similar to the mental contemplation, but much looser, right? Because I'm not holding ideas, I'm holding sensations in my body. Another place in the profile that it is really helpful is with your EQ, of course. So your emotional quotient, the ideology that you developed from when you were 7 until you were 14 years old. That emotional pattern is in our astral body. So what better way to tap into it than this emotional contemplation? And that pattern runs so much of our lives. When we get emotionally overwhelmed, that's the pattern that we go to most of the time. And so this work, this like intense hard work at the gym, I have found puts me in a similar place, or can put me in a similar place if my intention is to get there. And it's different when your intention is to put you there. When it's unintentional, stuff comes out sideways, right? Because we aren't expecting it, we don't have the tools ready to deal with it. But when I am intending to get into the shadow of my EQ, well, I know that it's coming. And I know that I'm going to be able to transmute that conflict, my 6th gene key in the sphere of EQ, into diplomacy. I'm going to be able to feel into our unity. I'm going to be able to feel into this ability to be at peace even within conflict. So even as my emotions are high, even as I'm feeling this intense energy of like I'm not safe, like things are not okay, I know that if I can sit in that, and if I do that enough, I can gradually teach my body that I am safe and that it is okay, even when this intense shadow energy of conflict shows up. Right? The shadow is there not so that we can get out of the shadow. That 6th gene key, conflict, diplomacy, peace, is so I can be at peace in conflict. The shadow never goes away. It's the fact that I can use that energy in a way that serves the collective and serves myself. And so the more opportunities I can create to do that, the better off I'm going to be. The final place that I've found this really helpful is the sphere of culture. So these are all keys that sort of unlock places in your profile. EQ and IQ, I kind of mush together. That's like one of the triggers. evolution, another trigger, and then your culture is the third trigger. And so this sphere of culture is how we are relating to other people as it pertains to prosperity. So I'm a first line there, which means the individual, the entrepreneur. So I'm designed to bring something out into the world, but it could also be a partnership or a small group or a network. And that's obviously an emotional thing. Anytime two auras interact, there's an exchange of energy that happens at our astral body. And so if we can learn how to tap into that astral body when that exchange is occurring, then we can use the gene key of our culture to respond a little bit differently. So for me, it's the 13th gene key: discord, discernment, and empathy. What that then allows me to do is I pull up intense emotions by doing a hard workout, by doing a heavy set or lots of different reps to failure or whatever the case may be. No matter what though, I've got this like really intense flow of life force flying through me. And in that moment, I can choose what story I decide I want to listen to when I'm emotionally charged, right? Because discord means that I'm hearing that the world is falling apart, that I'm not safe, that I need to struggle and fight to be whole and get mine and be who I want to be in the world. Versus the energy of discernment. So in this really intense energy, can I still discern that the world is safe, that God loves me, that there's a reason that everything in my life is happening? And doing that with the intense emotion is what allows me to do it in my actual life. So it's just like training. We're training our physical body, and at the same time, we're training our emotional body. And that's what I was saying before when I was finishing up my ruck is, and I don't think I ever finished the thought, but it's like double duty. What a great use of time that I can get physically stronger and at the same time learn to regulate emotionally. And remember, this isn't just about you doing your part. By charging up that emotion, it allows the gene keys to contact your astral body. It allows the gene keys to settle in to those places that you are holding trauma, that you are holding wounding. And it gradually starts to unwind to the DNA that's sitting in your cells. The magic will take hold if you give it time and space. And this will not happen if you don't take the time for contemplation. So you can't just do the set, sit for a minute, and then do the next set right away. Right? This takes a little, give yourself 3, 5, 10 minutes in between. We need the patience, the gentleness. Remember, it's quiet, it's gentle, it's peaceful, and it's certain. You'll know when it's happening. All right, that feels like enough on emotional contemplation. Our third and final piece is physical contemplation. And interestingly, you would think this is how I used physical contemplation, by doing exercise. But for me, that is too emotionally charged. This physical place it's deep, it's sacral, it's like at the base of my spine and in my belly, behind my navel, and it is something for me that requires a bit more stillness, right? We call that point behind the navel the still point. And I still move a little bit, as you'll see, but it's a totally different vibe than the other two. It's even less mental than this emotional contemplation. It's even, it's almost like being on a different plane altogether. So I'll see you there next. All right, let's leave the gym and we'll go to where we do our physical contemplation here. And this is what I think is the most important piece of the puzzle. It is the thing that has given me just this intense release. It feels like it's unburdened the weight of the world from my shoulders. And it's been a long and a slow process in doing that. Look at this. This is where I get to do my physical contemplation. And you don't need a place like this. All you need is a place that's got a little bit of quiet. But I'm not gonna lie, it is nice to have this beautiful with the birds and the frogs, just all of it. Physical contemplation is my favorite. I'm not sure if we're supposed to have favorites, but I can tell you that the place that I get to in my physical contemplation sometimes is this place of pure intoxication, my 56 gene key radiance and core wound, or ecstasy, my 46th IQ gene key. It is such a place of pure potential and bliss and peace. And on the flip side of that, sometimes it opens up things that are deep, deep wounds from the past. And I am pretty convinced that there are not all wounds that I'm holding from my lifetime. If you remember, the gene keys is about ultimately our DNA. And that DNA, that 90% of junk DNA, is holding the collective memory and karma of everything, of all of us, of all of Gaia's evolution. And I can feel myself tap into that place in this physical contemplation. My intention when I come out to this blanket is to allow my cells to soak in the wisdom that I've brought from my head by going on my walk or my ruck or my jog, and pulled down into my body, into my astral body, where those emotions and that energy and that life force is flowing to me even a layer deeper, into just my being, into the inside of my cells, those nuclei, where that twisted serpent of our DNA all day long is sending directions to our body and how it's meant to interact with the world. So this goes from a very woo-woo out there place to a very real thing where your body is creating physiology using hormones, using your endocrine system to make you feel a certain way, to give your consciousness a certain tone. And this blanket is where I can affect that tone. And there's a few ways that I do my physical contemplation. The first is breath work. So I'm a certified coach in breath work through Laird Hamilton and Gabby Reese, actually. So it's a little more tied to like performance-based stuff, athletics stuff. However, it carries over into upregulation, downregulation of your nervous system, proper breathing. All of those things are vital for connecting to our inner essence, our inner self. The breath is what connects us to the rest of the world. There is something breathing you. Have you ever thought about that? You're not the one. You're not saying, okay, breathe, breathe, breathe. There is this being that is at the core of all of us. This thing that I believe that if I lived your life and had all of your life experiences, I would be you. And if you lived my life and all my life experiences, you would be me, because our animating principle, the thing at the very center of us, is exactly the same. And the only thing that it makes it express differently is the life experiences that you had up until this point. And breathwork allows you to connect to that thing. And the method that I'm gonna recommend right now, and disclaimer, always check with a healthcare professional, make sure you're healthy and safe as you do this thing. But it's a very rapid breath. So You could either do breath of fire, which is like in yoga, like a when I'm using my belly to suck in hard and fast, and you could do that for maybe a minute or so and then just be. Or you can do more of like a Wim Hof style breath where you can come in through your nose or in through your mouth. It really doesn't matter, but the key is that you're getting a full breath and then you're just letting it fall out. And I'm really driving that breath with the diaphragm, trying not to vertical breathe, it's called. We don't want vertical breath, we want 360 breath. Expand and open as you breathe. And after 30 of those breaths, typically I'll take a big inhale, hold at the top for about 10 seconds, and exhale through the nose or mouth. Again, doesn't matter. And then just staying empty. And even just in that, even as I've talked to you, I just have this settling, this peace, this opening in my heart, tingling in my toes, connection to the earth, just from those quick breaths. And typically I'll do that for 3 rounds. And I cannot describe to you the level of connection and the level of depth that I have been able to achieve through that simple practice. And as it ties to the gene keys, I don't focus on anything. So remember, I had those 3 areas that were good to focus on, for me anyway, as we did our emotional contemplation. I don't have that with physical contemplation. It's deeper than thought. It's deeper than trying to direct anything. It's just trusting and allowing and giving time and space and allowing this quiet wisdom to reach into your cells, to reach into your being and begin to shift things. And I promise you, from the heart of hearts, that if you stick with it, you will find it. The next thing that I do oftentimes with my physical contemplation is what I often call wiggling. So basically, I get down on the ground and I just kind of move my body until I find a place that feels stuck. So like right now, I can feel some tension and tightness over here on this side. And so I'm just gonna wiggle over until, okay, there we go. I feel like an extension in my spine. And then I just sit there and I'm breathing into that restricted space. So I'm trying to expand my ribs. It's down here. I'm not sure if you can see that. I think you can. It's like at the base of my rib cage where where the space is between my ribs and my hips. And by breathing into that, what starts to happen is I can literally feel the fascia, the muscle, the tension start to relax and let go. And my head starts to quiet. Things get soft. And it's just this really beautiful, peaceful place. Sometimes with my awareness, I know that I said I didn't really think about anything, but sometimes I do think about and think isn't really the right word, but I put my awareness to a specific point in my body. My awareness, I felt, was like in my rib cage and in my hip in that moment. And I'm just seeing what needs to come up or through when that happens. Also, the movements can be really subtle. I made it a gross movement because I'm on camera. Gross meaning like large, not like, ew, gross, because I wanted you to be able to see something. But like literally, sometimes I'm lying on my back and you're probably not gonna be able to see this, but I might just have to like tension a shoulder and like drop a hip in ever so slightly. Like this can be so subtle. And now I feel like this alignment, maybe is the word I'll use, in my belly, like a better energy flow moving through my body. And then once I find that, I can just breathe into it and just try and stick with that sensation or that feeling, because that is the wisdom doing the work in your body, in your belly. Another great way to do this, I hope you can see the top of my head here. Let me just do a quick check. Actually, I'll just raise the camera up a little bit. Okay, so another great way is like some Qigong type movements. So like tapping, so I'm just rotating my body. I'm slapping myself, you can do your shoulder. I'm also hitting my kidneys, the back of my rib cage, and just the more motion here, the better. And what I found is that tying that into the breath makes me like totally zone out. And it's kind of similar to walking or rucking, but it's deeper than that. It's like it's like I'm in a totally different place. It's like I come out of my body. And it's incredibly disorienting sometimes. Like when you first come back, it's like, whoa, what just happened to me? I don't quite understand. But at the same time, you start to contact this other plane, this other place, and you start to realize that there's so much more here than what you can see and hear. Another great practice is what's called tapping. So I was doing some tapping by twisting here, but you can also just tap different parts of your body. So focusing on your chest can be helpful to move some things, some emotions, hitting the neck, down the arms. And I've found that this just moves some energy around. So I'll typically use this when I am like trying to do a physical contemplation and it feels like things are a little bit stagnant, because ultimately this is about the stillness for me. It's about being down here. For the sake of this video, I'm giving you a couple other tips and tools, but like I would be laying on this for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, depending on how much time I had. And don't let that limit you. If you have 5 minutes, 5 minutes is 5 minutes. That's a great place, but it's the stillness, it's the being. And then we're just doing a couple of different things to like get things flowing, make sure that we're not stuck, allowing that energy to move. And to me, that's what facilitates this physical contemplation. The last thing I'm going to give you as a tool for this is what's called a fascial maneuver. There's a brand called Human Garage who I really love for this stuff. I've not worked with them, so don't consider that an endorsement, but from the free content that they have on YouTube and on Instagram, I've definitely gotten a ton of value. There's a 45-minute fascial maneuver full body release, and that's where what I'm going to show you right now comes from. So fascia is this tissue that connects all of our organs, our bones, our muscles, all of it. It's like a giant balloon that encases all of that stuff. And it is what I think holds our trauma. And so I'm going to give you 3 different maneuvers. These are what are called the essential maneuvers. And what I find again is that this allows my body to open up a little bit more before I do this physical contemplation. So this first one is what's called pallet swipe. So you're going to take your right leg, cross it over your left leg. I'm not sure if you can see that, but I'm just crossing over and then standing on it. And I'm going to take my right arm and put it on my left shoulder, my left arm and put it on my right shoulder. So with my legs crossed, I'm going to settle down my shoulders. The thumb is going to come inside the mouth, and we're just going to swipe from one side to the other across the top of the palate, and you do that 6 times. Then we get into what's called totally twisted. So again, right leg is gonna cross over left, right arm is gonna come, this time instead of on the shoulder, under the ribs, left arm is grabbing the back of the shoulder here, and then you're kind of squeezing, like hugging yourself. And that creates this tension pattern in the fascia. And then I'm gonna turn my head to the left, turn my shoulders to the right. And before I do that, I skipped a really important step. You're squeezing your butt, squeezing your sex organs, your anus up, and flexing your abs. So I'm squeezing everything nice and tight, my right leg over, right arm, left arm. With that squeeze, what they call a spinal pelvic lock still in place, I turn the head to the left and the body to the right. And then I can just breathe into that, and go look at the Human Garage video for the specific steps, because there's more to it than just that. And then after we go this way, we come back to center and we would go the other way. And then you do the same thing on the other side. And then the last one I want to quickly mention is what's called anti-gravity. So your hands are going to go behind your head on your neck, and you're going to kind of lift up. And what we're doing here is pulling up first, again, trying to create space, and then coming down. So opening up between the shoulder blades and the low spine. And we start to twist one way. We twist the other way. We come down into a quarter squat and do some twisting. And then we come all the way down into the bottom of a squat to open up and stand up with our butt first, woo, and then stand tall. So that's just a quick breakdown, but what you'll feel is that fascia is holding so much tension. At least mine is. And when you can tap into that and start to release it, it has changed my entire life. I couldn't walk almost 3 years ago, I'm not kidding. It took me an hour to get moving in the morning before I could do anything to not just be in extreme and excruciating pain. And it is the physical contemplation that allowed that process to open up, that allowed me to regain who I am and what I love to do. Remember, I told you in the gym, I'm an athlete. I've been moving my body my whole life, and it was taken from me. And you know, every shadow contains a gift, because over those few years, I was forced to stop. I was forced to slow down. I was forced to go inside. I was forced to figure out all of these things that I can now share with you, that allow my sixth line to have tools to teach and be with the world. So all of this to say, it's a journey. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes self-inquiry, contemplation, mental, emotional, physical, the gene keys, the lines, the spheres, the programming partners, how they interact, the stories in your life that tie to those things. The level of contemplation and the things that we can contemplate is literally endless. You just have to carve out the time to do it. And if you're constantly seeking, learning, needing more information, and not giving yourself time and space for that information to integrate, you're not allowing the magic of the gene keys into your life. And I want that for you. As someone who is working to become a gene keys guide, I know the power that is hidden in this system, in the wisdom that Richard Rudd has shared with the world. But I can't tell you the wisdom, right? Working with me isn't me helping you to understand your life or your gene keys. It's about creating the space and developing the trust in me that allows you to develop the trust in the gene keys, in the system, so that they can do their work. Who am I? Who am I compared to the energy that is trying to work through me and through the gene keys into you? I'll tell you who I am. I am a player. I am a conduit. I am a character. And the Spirit of grace is here to move through me, and it's here to move through you. And we just have to create the conditions for that to happen. So our next wisdom call is this Thursday. It's August 29th at noon. I will post also the next calls. I think it's probably going to be 2 weeks from there. You can register at my website, coachjcohen.com. I'll also link it in the description. Wisdom calls are totally free. I would love to see you there. They're great. We talk about the gene keys. We talk about, last time we talked about the mother wound. The time before that, we talked about tying spirituality and business together. We've talked about some beautiful reprocessing of childhood memories and trauma, and it's just a beautiful space and a beautiful container that continues to amaze me. And I'd love to see you there. I'd love to see you a part of it. Thank you for being here. Until next time.